Hello, I'm not ready. I think I had one person over here and they left, but that's okay because, yeah, I understand. I would too. So let me go announce this in my Discord. So this is my stream. If you're watching this after the fact, thank you. If you are happy and you know it, okay. Okay. Right on. Okay, so I'm going to... Let me think about this. I'm going to spend today listening to... What am I talking about? Reading studies this morning because I have a book that I'm getting into. So basically, I am going to read a book about abstract math and category theory because it probably relates to how my brain thinks and how other people with my problems do, and then we can have a fix that works like a hot fix but for your brain in modern society. So like that's what we're doing. Great. Okay, so we now know that about what we're doing today. That's good to know, and I need to share this. Hokey man, hokey man. I don't know why that happened. Hope this is okay, cause I can't stop. Welcome to... Oh, cause it's Hollywood. We got it. We got there. I understood myself. I hope that journey was fulfilling for you as well. Okay. I had my caffeine. Can you tell? Okay. So, I had a terrible nightmare. Horrible. Horrendous. Violent. Awful. Relationships crumbling. Terrible. Just bad. And I don't know what that was about. I must be processing something about rejection. I do not know. Okay, let me do that, everyone. It was awful. I'm not even going to mention what it was. Just bad. It was bad. I was like, thanks, brain. So didn't like it, but it's over. So let's go ahead and start the process of all the stuff we must do. I'm going to throw on a filter, I think, because I like them. Let's put on a new one. What should I look for? Let's see. I can search them again. Maybe I can get blush or something. Let's see what's in blush if I look for blush. It's raining. Merlin is not happy about this because it sucks. Oh my god, this one's adorable. Oh, I love it. Okay. It's got a little... Oh, wow. Okay. Good morning, Shade. Good morning. Welcome in. I had a terrifying dream. And I didn't like it, and it was not good, but it happened, and it's over, and thank God. Alright, we got this guy on me. Oh yeah, this is the one. Okay, sorry. I don't know what I am doing. Okay. Boop! Hi, y'all. Look. Okay. I thought yesterday that lots of my relationships were crumbling. That weren't. Oh no. I think that also potentially is just coming from the issues with being able to discern social signals. You're like, wait, huh? Has a bad thing happened? Oh my god. Not again. I don't know why it happened last time. I don't know what's going on. I miss the days when people just walked up to each other in the playground and they're like, wanna be friends? And you're like, yeah! And even if it's a mistake, oh well. At least you had a friend. Shit. Oh no. That might just be me having an autobiographical moment. Okay, so Aries season beginning. I had the worst dream ever. I had the worst dream too. Yeah, me and my only friend. Yeah, you know how I made my. Okay, so let me tell you my history of friendship. My first friend was a boy named David. Hi, Kyle. Which is cool because that was my dad's name. And this was in preschool. And David's parents thought that David was going to be a boy. Or sorry, girl. We got there. Girl. I'm not quite awake yet. And so David had a shit ton of really cool girl toys. Like, they also, like, you know, I have a Polly Pocket collection. So that sort of a toy and that. And like, so I had a shit ton of them. And he's like, here's this. Here's a cool My Little Pony. Here's that. I was like, all right, cool. Fuck yeah, cool. So like he's basically like a drug dealer for girl fun toys that I typically couldn't play with yet because they were for older kids. I don't know what the fuck happened there. So, slightly older kids. So, it wasn't marketing, because it was bought for him when he was a baby. Like, before he was born. I'm like, what the fuck? So, anyways, so that kid was bomb. That kid was cool as shit. I was like, let's go. And then my next friend, I didn't make until kindergarten, because we fought over a jump rope, and she held her ground, and I was like, ma'am, lady, miss, I respect you. She's like, I respect you. I was like, okay, we're friends now. You know? You have a can-do attitude. We must unite. We're either or you know what I'm saying? And then there was a dry spell. I didn't really have friends before kindergarten. I just had the one friend until I transferred schools. I had the one friend David, and then I had the one friend Stephanie. I did make a friend named Amanda, who's the other weirdo, towards the end of mid first grade. She came in mid year. That one was weird because my principal was very invested in both of us having a friend. I'm just gonna say it clearly, because me and Amanda started not getting along at some point. And also part of that was like Amanda had an older brother named Mark who was the same distance as my brother, and Mark and Robert were friends. So then, you know, we were just like we went to the house together. My mom could drop us off. So okay. So then Amanda was a tomboy, like super, like if you told me Amanda is like a gold star lesbian today, I'd be like, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. So Amanda, though, very, 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 very high energy person. I will say that. I remember that from when I was a little kid. Me, kind of sort of that way, like in some way, like I've always been like this, you know, like with my subjects, I'm like, yeah, with everything else, I'm like, I want to go back to sleep. Like, so anyway, so we got into some sort of a thing. And then my principal makes us do something in the talent show together. She dresses us up as little cow people. cowboys, I don't know. And we have to sing everything you can do, I can do better. And this is real. And apparently we killed. So, and that resolved our fight. I don't know. It's like, it sounds like an after school special. I completely understand that this sounds like some Disney Channel shit, but this actually happened. And then roll credits, you know? And then it was produced by, I don't know, Dick Wolf. Yeah, all my friends are guys for the most part, which apparently is a common. Yeah, I'd say like the bull, I kind of have 50-50, to be honest, like over my life. I'd say like just barely it tips over to the bulk of it being, well, at least AMAB, it will say, for the common parlance of the era, which I, by the way, think will keep evolving. But yeah, but at the very least, I had a lot of people, if I had to like weigh it out chromosomally, probably, well, I guess technically speaking, I'd always have more X's. But there's like, well, if it's just the chromosomes, then I guess I'm more like a quarter Y. I don't know what I'm doing. Anyways, and then you divide everybody and you split them up like King David said or some shit. Okay, mine's mostly been guys, which is hilarious because my social obliviousness meant I never knew when people have feelings. Nope, that's happened to me. Yep, nope. And also, I think they inappropriately put me on a pedestal. I had a shirt for a while that said, "Sorry, your princess is in another castle," just because that's also how I felt. And I was like, oh shit, there's a shirt for that? So, because they were all, I was like a tomboy, but like a computery vibe tomboy, right? Like, I'm in the computer lab now. And like, you know, I didn't have my glasses. I got my glasses later. That was like, finally, my nerd card is here. It's finally arrived in the mail. Let me get everything up that we need, by the way. So yeah, so basically what had happened was, I had this weird gap where they're like, you're not like other girls. You're not like other girls. I was like, yeah, but that doesn't mean I like you. Like, when did that happen? Like, we've been in the same school for years now. Like, huh? And so I had some weird shit go down with that. And then they'd always be like, you don't even know what my feeling. I was like, dude, I don't. And also, what? Just because I have boobs now doesn't mean I give a shit about you like that. Why would that follow? So that's kind of funny to hear. It's not, you know why? With the exception of like 1825, I've always had more lady friends than guy friends. That's because we blend in better. So we already are the odd one out. So we don't, that's the theory, is that we all kind of do it. So we all gravitate the other way because it's harder to tell that we don't actually have the ability to do the social cohesion, because the expectation is dropped down. That's also why we tend to hang out with people that are older or younger than us. It's not as obvious that we're deviant. Also, if you sometimes you'll end up with older people because they'll see you, especially if you have women around you and they happen to be older. So if you're hanging out with girls and they tend to be older at a certain point, they're basically caretaking us. They're like, oh, it's like a baby doll. Like, it's so confused. So you can get girls that have been socialized into mothering and they'll mother us. That can happen. And sometimes we hang out with younger people because they have simpler social expectations than older. Yep. And even people not socialized as girls, they'll do a little parentifying around you because they're like, this one just doesn't know. Like, wow, look at it not knowing. Look at the baby. Hanging out with 16, 20-year-olds when I was 14. Yeah, right. And they're probably very protective. Maybe if they were assholes too, because I know how that can be, but they're probably still, I bet there was a couple of them that were like protective. See, I didn't get in the trap of dating a year ahead, and I'll tell you why. Because people always told me that I, like, even when I was really young, I was going to have to date older because I was so mature. And I'm like, so you're telling me I have to date a guy who, when he was my age, was stupider than me. So you're telling me I have to date a dude who, when he was my age, was a nugget head. Like, was chicken nuggets in there and fucking, dumb shit up in there in the headspace. You know what I mean? And I say stuff like this now, today. So you want me to date that guy? No! I refuse. So that, yeah. Okay, so that, yeah. Thank you. I have a concrete, because I formed that thought so early, I have this like concrete sort of like concept, but it's still vague around the edges of who that guy is that they wanted me to date, who would have been not as mature as me when I was like 8. Like, fuck that. Yeah, I like to hang out with people who are older and younger in general. Some people my age, it's a novelty, but they have to have more in common with me around, like, our brain for it to be, I'd say, a lasting friendship a lot of times. I mean, sometimes no, I guess, but I don't know. I don't know about that, actually. There were some older guys, and I really don't have that many friends my age, and the only ones that I do are autistic. So, yeah, there's some older guys and girls, actually, that were just shitty. Yeah, of course. Oh, of course. Yeah, I met a few of those, too. But generally, I think when you're entering adulthood, there's a general understanding that you don't bully children. Yeah. Everything I do has, like, a spread of ages, which is nice. The girlfriends of the older guys I'd spend time around were me and then probably any other in the group. Yeah, that can be the case. Yes. Also, he may have been going through the era when social convention was bitches are hot. Why are men so attracted to bitches? That sort of thing. Okay. Anyways, I hate our culture. Sorry, I just needed to have the Captain Picard at his desk moment, and now I will get APS stuff. Okay, so please do tracking. What is the purpose of tracking? It's not to be like, look at me, or gold star. You're not winning a prize. You're just giving your brain a little check in on different reference points of what is getting done that helps you to be an independent person. Or, relatively speaking, an independent person versus what your impairments actually create problems with. It also lets you know, like, okay, I do not have my support needs met. Like, something's going wonky if you're like, I am never getting that done. What the heck? No, that's cool, man. Like if that works for you, that's not lazy. There is no lazy. You're like, I found a support need. Good. I was just listening to a comedian saying how, like, GPS is really good for people with ADD. It's also good for anybody with, like, a D at the end of their diagnosis, to be honest. But myself included. Like, I don't have spatial working memory. How do you think that works out with driving if I don't have something to tell me where to go? Like, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be able to even do it. I mean, like, I was on the bus the other day, and now that I've embraced that I don't have that type of memory, I was looking at, I'll answer that. That's a great question, Hokey Man. I got answers for that. I was looking at my phone, and I was like, okay, I have 5 stops to go. Those are the names of the stops. I'm reading my book. I could trust that I will know when my stop is because I've looked at this. Okay, I'll look again. I was like, I'm gonna have to look every time. Never mind. Like, every stop, I just had to look again because I can't really remember. So, okay, Cisco. Definitely Cisco. Let me put them in order of my personal favorites. I'd say Janeway Picard is pretty close, actually. Cisco is number 1 for me, personally. Janeway really grew on me, too. Also, I'm gonna say Cisco, Janeway, Picard. Kirk is so hokey. Archer, Kirk. And Archer also had character development. I'd say, yeah, Archer's character development was actually pretty interesting, turns out. But Janeway is just a very, very strong character. And also the actress just, I think the actress made really good choices constantly. So I feel like if Janeway was played by anybody else, it wouldn't have that same, like, I don't really pick up on like subtext, but there's like this like undercurrent of Janeway that just makes her feel so lifelike. So Janeway is more lifelike, I'd say. Oh, also you can't see my tracker. Phenomenal. Yeah, I'm a professional streamer now. Okay. But yeah, so what would be if, okay, actually everyone, if nobody's into Star Trek, that's not a problem for me, but if you are into Star Trek, I do want to know, if you could, what you would put that order into. Kirk is just so weird. He's such a weird, he's a man of his time, and he's also played by that guy is something else. It's played by somebody that I'm also like, okay, interesting. You need to watch Deep Space Nine. I think in terms of like autism shows, like Deep Space Nine, watching that as an autistic person is a very grounding experience. There's so many characters, and I mean, in obviously in the Next Generation you have Data, but in Deep Space Nine you have Odo Dax, who's played by, well, multiple actors really, too, but there's also other side actors as they do flashbacks. You have Kira, okay, so all these people have little nods. You have Garrick, right? Who else do you get in there? You get more. There's one more that you get that I would say has Bashir. You get 5 people that have like little ASD traits. 5! And even to some extent, I would say that Worf has some ASD-like traits, and you also get him later on it. Like, bruh, what? You get like 6 people that you're like, ah, man, shit, I can have my mirror neurons do literally anything. Fuck yeah. And then Cisco is just the G. Cisco's the best. Cisco's amazing. Cisco's amazing. Like, Cisco, I would like Cisco could inspire you to like walk over a mountain into fire. Me who didn't even know those were Star Trek characters until Jane said it. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. It's okay. You don't have to like Star Trek. It's I'm okay. So when I was hanging out in the computer lab guy, math teacher, very into Star Trek. So yeah, we watched Star Trek in there. It's like, yes, we did. That was happening. Yes. Was that part of why I was like hanging out there instead of in other rooms that I could be in? Yeah, there was tons of reasons. He had cutouts, man. He had cutouts. He had Worf. He had Deanna Troi. Janeway's, if somebody says Janeway, I vibe. I get it. Like, I get why she would be the top tier. I get it. I think Cisco has a special place in my heart. And also I was watching Cisco first. So if I had seen them in the reverse order, if I had been exposed to Janeway and then Cisco, I probably would have anchored. What is it? Imprinted. I probably would have imprinted on Janeway, but I imprinted on Cisco. That's who I imprinted on. Are you my mommy? Anyways, I think I liked that Cisco had so many oddballs and like worked with all of them, I was like, ooh, I don't want to work for that guy. I want a job on his ship. Oh no. All right. Who's your number 2? Who's like, who comes in second? I think I should earn this from yesterday. Whoopsie. I did not do that. Control Z. Control C. Control V. There we go. That was from yesterday. I'm going to give myself that one for today already because I'm working on some stuff. Alrighty. So. Cool. Right on. Pardon me. Okay. Oh, you didn't go stargazing. Oh no. Well, it might have started raining when you were doing it, so. When everybody's done tracking, we can go hang out with Jane while she reads studies. We're going to start with that today because I need to get through the book on category theory, the accessible book on category theory. I can't wait to get deeper into this book. Eugenia Chang is the author, and I think she's great. You upset Aiden by not going to do it? Well, you could talk that out and be like, sometimes I just can't. Can't. And I think it's important for people to have that expectation of you. And you can even say like, hey, in a future world, I would like to have a little bit more can in my life, but I don't know how to get there yet. So I'm currently at this level of can't, but it's not against you personally, right? I think that might be helpful to state that, like I also, would like to be able, because I heard you were excited about it. Right? And you're disappointed too. But for now, this is like the level that you can perform at. And you don't, that's where I'm at. I'm like, I don't know why my society hasn't got this worked out, but I'm trying to work it out. And you're here at peer support in the morning, So I bet there's a way to communicate that. It's not, and it's not a cop-out, We're not lazy. That's one thing I need to also inject in there as many times as possible. Whenever that word comes up, I just don't think that that's, I think, if that applies to anybody, it's definitely not us. I really am. I want to go tonight if they're up for it, but I don't know if they will be. I haven't heard from them since I woke up. Okay. Well, can I ask if this isn't too personal? You can skip this or tell me somewhere else. You don't have to do this here. Why do you feel like you upset them? Like, what data is making you concerned about that? Like, what either like scan back in your episodic memory and find the data points, or like what changed where that's your conclusion now? The Frankie Grand Negus. Oh yeah. I will hear. I can hear it in my head. I think it might be NA. Please. Ha! It's NA. The Grand Negus. Oh, Wallace Shawn. Right, that makes sense. He's the guy from, whatchamacallit? This guy. Inconceivable. The Princess Bride. Wasn't he in, like, My Dinner? No, that's somebody else. Was he in My Dinner with Andre? No. I think that's somebody else. I have no fucking idea. Apparently he was in Young... Oh, no, he was. Okay, he was in My Dinner with Andre. I've never seen that, but I've heard tell of it. It gets brought up a lot. Interesting. Okay. Yes. Okay. They were supposed to go to work this morning, but they didn't. I heard them get out of the shower, but I didn't hear them leave, so they went back to sleep, which can often be an indication that they are upset. Oh, also, they do have a penchant for jumping to conclusions sometimes. They're getting better about it, but it still happens. I'm certain he has a character in the Kung Fu Panda cartoon series. Really? Oh, maybe, yeah. So it's not unreasonable to think that they might feel like I bailed. Did I mispronoun? If I ever do that, it's, I don't know. I mean, I might not ever be really good at pronouns. I've accepted. I don't know how my language works yet. But if I ever do that, just know that I'll get it right the next time, probably. But yeah. So if they might know explicitly that I wouldn't. Wait, so it's not unreasonable to think that they might feel like I bailed intentionally, even if they might know explicitly that I wouldn't do that. Okay. Interesting. You know what I tell people? I just say, like, look, if you don't tell me there's something wrong, I won't know. I'll think we're good. Because I don't want to... I don't want people to be sad or upset or hurt. Generally speaking, there's very limited experiences in my life where I'm like, yeah, you suck and you should feel bad. Like, and that includes people that have done terrible things, genuinely terrible. Like, everybody would agree. Like, you know, survey says everyone would say that sort of thing. I'm like, ew. Like, and so I can pretty reliably tell people, like, there's just almost no way that I'm ever going to want to have them feel bad. Like, that's not my intention. I can't imagine any instance when I would. That's like, yeah. Especially not something that would lead to actions for me. So then if people know that about me, then they can be like, okay, maybe I can just tell her what's going on, and that will simplify this. Be back later? Okay. It's a trust thing. I don't want to dump their bag out on the table here, but yeah, trust and yeah, it creates a feedback loop where they're afraid to communicate about it because it could create. Yeah. Well, see, but the only way to establish trust and a sense of trust is to have that conversation and have it go well. That's the only way. So it won't actually, and they're working on it. Y'all need some way to communicate that, because the problem is the slowness, right? Y'all need like a code word or something. Like, sometimes like support, there's occasionally times where I'm like, I've been socialized to try to insert a delay before a cutoff socially with somebody where it's like, just stop talking time. And support's really good. Like, I'm going now. And I was like, wait, I could also do that then. But I still have this buffer where I'm like, wait, let me make sure that everybody. So like, even like leaving when I really want to leave, sometimes I just have to go. And that's something that I've had to learn how to fight so that people know I don't have a problem with them or that I like them, basically, and that's not unchanged at all. So that's tough. But support's been interesting for me to interact with because every now and then I'm like, maybe I'm a bad friend. And I don't think that is her perception of it at all. I mean, maybe, I'm sure she has critiques that she could offer that are objective, but I doubt I even doubt they're that bad. Like, even if, but I'm in my head, they're worse because that's what I've expected from people who have noticed, like, where my cutoff point really is. Like, it's like I have a very, very small envelope of, like, I'm ready to go. Yeah, it's getting better when those things happen to me, but myself, that is a slow process too. Yeah, I get uncomfortable when others or even myself somehow end up jumping to conclusions. Sometimes the track that other people or even me are thinking are in completely different dimensions. Yeah, I've noticed that too. I've also noticed that, like, between, you know what's helped me? I have had the opportunity at work to I have like basically two supervisors, basically. So I have like the person that I'm working with directly and the person that kind of supervises around admin-y stuff and also supervises a little bit around directly everybody. I think it's like a boop, boop, boop sort of thing. But so sometimes I'm like, I can talk to one supervisor being like, I think they were saying this. And they're like, oh no, that's not what they meant. And I was like, oh. Or it is kind of what they meant, but now I realize, like, oh, there's like two different interpretations, and then there's my interpretation, which is all like, I'm autistic, what is going on? You know, like that sort of a thing. I'm just like, the fuck is going on now? I don't like that. I don't think I like that. Huh? And so I'm out there like that, but then when I talk to, it just sounds like there's a lot of different interpretations. So if you ever have an opportunity to hear, like, two people's sides of the story that you're also involved in, it's fascinating. It's like, oh, that's really different. So I don't know what to make of that, but I think that it's just really easy for people to have very different social realities, and that's okay. It sort of inspired me to think about asking better questions of people. Backish, hi, welcome. I'm like, I'm frontish. I don't know. Ask better questions of people, like, to try to suss out what their schema is. Here we go. Let's see here. Let's get back into. So these are broadly in order. So let's see. Time cells of the hippocampus. Did I watch this one already? I don't know. Coding of Space and Time. Shit, I probably should watch that. So this, I think, is part of the issues. These time cells are actually not precisely that, but let's look at this one for a minute. Something, fair use something. All right. Oh, women in clinical research. Sounds cool.
Laboratory on the question, how does the hippocampus work? I am Howard Eichenbaum of the Center for Memory and Brain at Boston University. The way in which we pursue this question is to ask, how do neural networks within the hippocampus organize the kind of memories for which the hippocampus is essential? It turns out we know a lot about the kind of memory that requires the hippocampus, and we know quite a bit about the kind of information that hippocampal neurons encode. The challenge is to close what seems to be a missing link between the function of the hippocampus and the kind of information its neurons encode.
I think that's going to be an
autism.
A
wealth of studies, including in particular studies in amnesic patients like the famous patient HM, have shown us that the hippocampus is absolutely essential for episodic memory. And we know from Endel Tulving's introduction to episodic memory that the organization of knowledge in the episodic system is temporal. Within each episode that we record and can remember, one event precedes, co-occurs, or succeeds after another.
So notice, if you will, we're going here and here.
Each memory.
It's empty.
On the other hand, studies that involve recording from neurons in the hippocampus have identified that those neurons seem to encode spatial organizations. So, in this illustration at the bottom, as an animal wanders around an open environment, cells fire when the animal passes through a particular location, independent of other behaviors going on, or what the animal's doing, or what time it is. So the cells seem to organize what is often called a cognitive map of space, a spatial organization, rather than a temporal organization.
Thank you. That's what I was saying.
Reconcile these two views.
Because intervals. Please tell me it's going to be an issue of intervals in space. Right? Like, if you're in a new space, then time must have happened. Freaking hell, god damn it. Why is that a conflict? Okay, wait, let me go back.
Going on, what the animal's doing, or what time it is. So the cells seem to organize what is often called a cognitive map of space, a spatial organization, rather than a temporal organization. How could we reconcile these two views?
Easily.
Or in particular, we need to answer the question, can the hippocampus tell time and code information about temporal organization independently?
One way you could tell it is that you could mess up people's spatial travel. I was kidding. You were going to wind up the clock without any. Okay, so, cute seahorse, by the way. But, okay. I think the seahorse is just like, I feel pretty. Also pretty. Okay, so, like, one way you could think of it is, like, one way to test this, I wonder what they're going to do. When is this from? 3 years ago? One thing you could test this is like, okay, so if spatial information helps you to encode temporal information because you have a relative interval, like, awareness that's you built up over time and experience over your life of like how long it takes for you to get from point A to point B. If you're a mouse, you got your running speed, you got your walking speed, you got your 9-6 speed. You know, you got a couple of speeds, right? But like there, you can only go so fast. You only typically go so slow if you're still moving. That's right. So you could throw somebody into different conditions of speed that are abnormal, right? And see if it changes their perception of time. That's one way. Like, does that alter these spatial maps, and does it change for? Okay, let's see what they say.
Its role in spatial organization. We asked that question by putting animals into this interestingly shaped maze in which he performs a spatial alternation task. He starts a trial, for example, on this red path by coming from his left side, going up the stem of the maze, and then alternating to the other side, to the right side, coming around and getting a reward, and then starts on the blue path from his right side, up the middle of the stem, alternating to the left and coming around and getting another reward, and so on, pursuing this task all one after another, left trials and right trials. As you can see, in the midst of running the maze, we've located a treadmill. So in each trial, the animal steps up onto the treadmill, gets a small reward, has to run in place for several seconds, then can hop off the treadmill and complete the trial. The important aspect of this particular task is that while the animal's running in place, he's performing the same continuous behavior of running, and he's fixed in spatial location.
Right, I see what you did there.
So the only action of the time is that elapsed time is moving on, and we can try to find out if there's something in the neural activity of the hippocampus that seems to encode a temporal organization.
So then you're basically fixed space, so then you're hoping that the mouse understands that the space around them isn't changing. And if time is being assessed by changes in your environment, like the environment looks different, then I see what they're trying to do there. Interesting.
Let me now take you into the laboratory and show
Yay!
you what the experiment actually looks
Hi,
like.
mouse!
So here's our maze. Here's the treadmill in the
No
middle
mouth?
of the maze.
Oh.
Here's the rat.
Yay!
Going to step onto the treadmill.
Hi, rat.
What you're going to see and hear as the animal performs the task is the activity of 3 neurons, which I'll refer to as the pink neuron, the green neuron, and the blue neuron. As each neuron fires, we'll put a dot on top of the animal's head corresponding to the color of that neuron.
Birds also have they have two things. They have that, but they also have like kind of what is it called? Hold on a second. They can detect hold on. Magnetic fields, electromagnetic fields. Birds can see Earth's magnetic fields, and now we know. Yeah. So also that. Where were we?
I want you to watch closely as the animal runs on the treadmill with his head approximately here to determine whether the head's position is constant and when the cells fire as the animal's performing the task. So here, let me begin the trial. Here the rat steps onto the treadmill, he gets a little water, and the treadmill starts moving, and the pink cell fires. It stops quickly, and the green cell replaces it. And then the blue cell starts to fire.
This clicking is awful. Sorry.
The treadmill is now stopped. The animal will step off and begin to walk through space. Now these same neurons that can fire when the animal's running on the treadmill also fire at other locations. They are place cells at other locations on the maze. So there was the pink cell. We will soon see the blue cell also firing. So it has what we call a place field. Now the animal steps on the treadmill to begin another trial. We'll see one more. The pink cell fires first, followed by the green cell. Followed by the blue cell. Now the clock has stopped again. So if we record from a large number of these cells, we can plot the data from the entire population in this way, in which each of these cells' activity is plotted as a single row here. The peak of activity
Daniel.
is the red dot. Blue represents 0 firing rate. So this first cell, number 1, fired just at the beginning. Cell 2 fired a little bit later, 3 a little bit after that, and so on down the line. So that each cell fired at a particular moment in time, very much like place cells fire at locations in space. And so we call these cells time cells. Now the significance of time cells is really important for our understanding.
Well, then, but what about its movement of its limbs? That's what I'm asking. Does that not matter? Wouldn't that matter? Like, that's what I'm saying is, like, wouldn't you have, like, a rate that you typically move at? And, like, wouldn't you want... What? Like, what? Why wouldn't you vary the speed? Wouldn't it be simple enough to vary the speed of the treadmill to make it slow? I mean, slow enough that it still can't like jump off it and has and you have the reward in front of it, so it should still be motivated. Or faster? Like, wouldn't you want to do this? I don't know. The hippocampus uses time cells and place cells. Build a scaffold for the memories. To build? The cells parse the dimensions of space and time, yeah? And the cells represent events in their spatial and temporal. But what about the movement aspect? This is where I'm kind of like, but wait a second.
Understanding of how the hippocampus works in episodic memory. These data suggest that what the hippocampus does is use time cells and place cells to build a kind of scaffolding for memories.
Right.
In which each component of the scaffolding represents a particular location in space and a moment in time. And the memories that occur are located at their moments and at their locations in this overall scaffolding framework.
Sure.
And this kind of mechanism might be exactly what underlies our capacity to encode and then retrieve the organization of memories in space and time.
Sure, but I have more questions. Okay, hold on. Let me go back. What's this guy say? Or this person? I think I've watched this one, but we're watching it again.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press
or even
latest update.
discovering happens to us, such as discovering something new or having an accident or even observing
I
an
guess I
accident
should
occur.
go here.
Our brain remembers something memorable.
Get the latest updates.
When something memorable happens to us, such as discovering something new or having an accident or even observing an accident occur,
Learning.
our brain remembers these events like a video clip with all the surrounding context and environmental imagery and the right sequence of events. When we then try to recall the experience again and remember it and narrate it to someone, our brain recalls it in
Hold
the
on.
correct sequence.
Sorry.
This is known as episodic memory. Today's video is about findings which identify the exact cells in our brain that are responsible for making this kind of episodic memory and encoding and
Daniel,
recall.
I'm saying that okay, think about it. You're a moving creature. Wouldn't you have something that keeps track of the rate at which you move typically? Wouldn't that help you to understand the concept of time? So then why didn't they think to mess with the rate at which the mouse could move on the treadmill to see if that has an effect? Because I think that would be useful information for a locomotive organism that has to do tasks on the daily to keep itself alive. So why wouldn't your spatial and temporal information be linked to your perception of your own movement and the rate that you typically move at? So like I don't see the embodied component enough there, where you're aware of your body and you're aware of the way that your body is able to traverse space and the rate at which it does. I don't see that being included in that data or messed with. I don't see that variable being fudged around. And I think if you don't, you're missing an opportunity for one, but for two, like I would really want to know if that changes if you change the rate that the treadmill is moving, so that the mouse has to move at a different speed than, and like first have the treadmill move where the mouse is moving at approximately the same speed as the rest of the maze. Second, have it so it has to quicken up its pace to do the treadmill, and one where it has to go slower. So like, wouldn't that, do you see what I'm saying? Like, why wouldn't you want to mess with that variable when you have an embodied organism that has, like, we've been embodied, like, that's been part of the equation for all of our evolutionary history ever since we were little wormies, you know, tubes moving around in the water.
Possible, according to new research in the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences, or PNAS. My name is Sandhya Ramesh and this is Pure Science.
She has a nice mole.
Time cells. This is the name that scientists have given to these group of cells that help store and recall episodic memories sequentially. These essentially store information with something that is akin to timestamps in the right sequence so that we can recall these events in the right order. Time cells in the brain act as an index which can be referenced across time and then recall memories in the order in which the events in those memories occurred. The region of brain where this processing takes place is the hippocampus. We've known for a long time that the hippocampus is the center for navigation and memories in our brain. We've already known that it contains a group of cells called place cells which fire when a person or animal is at a specific location. Place cells were first detected and confirmed in rodents several years ago. When rats are in a spatially structured environment, a space that's built for them, we can see these cells firing when we observe their hippocampus. And we know that humans have these place cells too. Similarly, scientists are also able to first confirm the presence of time cells in rodents. In 2011, for example, scientists performed an experiment on rats where they trained rats to perform a two-step task.
That's a mouse.
Inbuilt
and it's pooping. What an odd choice.
The brains of these rats were monitored in the experiment with surgically implanted electrodes that recorded neural activity in the hippocampus. The rats were first
we're back to this guy! It's the same one!
With a smell. There were pairs of object and smells, and
somebody thought that was funny. There's no way. They're like, what if we put, like, we need some stock video. What if it's a pooping mouse? Well, we need a rat. I know, but this pooping mouse. Like, oh my god. I want to high five whoever picked that out and just be like, I don't know what you're thinking. This study is crap. It's not even a rat, it's a mouse, and it's pooping. And they used the same shot twice. That wasn't a continuation of our rat's journey through pooptasia, if you will.
When they dug for the correct smell, they received food as reward. After this pair association was done, where each object corresponded to a certain smell, The rats were introduced to one of those objects.
I don't even know what that
and
is.
then they were asked to enter into an enclosed area.
I think that's a gerbil.
In this enclosed space, they were kept for 10 seconds. This was the inbuilt delay in the experiment.
Inbuilt delay.
And then the rats were released into an area that contained a flower pot that was scented. If the smell in the flower pot corresponded to the object they had, the rats started to dig for food. If the smell did not correspond to the object that they first saw before entering the enclosed space, they did not dig. Through the course of this experiment, the researchers identified cells that were firing. When the rats were training to associate a smell with an object, there were some 300 neurons that were firing in the hippocampus. When the rats then entered the enclosed space for 10 seconds, the scientists noticed that about 1/3 of the neurons still kept firing even though nothing was happening. The researchers concluded that during that time period, the hippocampus was actually encoding the passing of time. If the delay in this enclosed space was beyond 10 seconds, where sometimes experimenters did extend the time period, they noticed that some of the neurons continued to fire for beyond 10 seconds, but new neurons started firing as well, as if their brains were recalibrating and marking the additional passage of time. This is also similar to how place cells were demonstrated to work.
Okay, there we
Now,
go.
this experiment was conducted on rats.
That is a rat.
But the new experiment of time cells was performed with humans. It was performed on 27 people by researchers at the New York University. In the experiment, patients were waiting for surgery for severe epilepsy and had already had electrodes implanted in their brain as a part of their pre-surgical procedures. The patients were first asked to study around 12 to 15.
So I like that data, but I also still want a treadmill that messes with how fast or slow it has to move, but it stays in the same space. I still want that.
Words that appeared in a sequence on a laptop for about 30 seconds. Then they had a short break, after which they were asked to recall the words. Meanwhile, there were electrodes in their brain and their hippocampal activity was being measured. The scientists found that a small number of cells would fire at very specific times during each word sequence. And the scientists think that these cells were acting as timestamps for people to remember when these words occurred in the sequence. All of this activity was observed among neurons firing in the hippocampus. The authors offer further support for their theory that these particular group of cells are time cells, and these are the ones that are responsible for our understanding of sequential order of events in memories. They refer to past experiments on memory that
I
were
still think you have to introduce movement components with all of this. I really do.
conducted on people with damage to their hippocampus. In one 2016 experiment, for example, scientists had asked a number of people, both with and without hippocampal damage to the brain, to take a tour of University of California, the San Diego campus. They then asked people to later recall the things that happened on the tour sequentially. And they found that people with no brain damage were able to recall memories in the correct order, while those who suffered from hippocampal lesions or any other kind of damage did have memories but not in the right order. The researchers state that this could be because their brains did not have
They
time
really
cells.
need to research
They
this.
state that time cells are the ones that encode and timestamp
In
and
autistics.
record events as they happen in relation to the events, like a linked list. Each node in this list, each memory has the value but is missing the link to the next node, so the sequence is lost. But the researchers told NPR, the story will be linked in the description below.
So okay. So many questions I still have. But yeah, this is where we're at. Is like I'm gonna review these later, but that's just I watched this earlier on in my dive on this. Okay, so let me think. Sorry, conceptually mapping this out is also pretty difficult because of the level of insight that I have isn't sufficient yet. And I'm gonna say yet. I think I can get close enough for what I'm trying to accomplish at the very least for practical purposes. I still think it would be critical to introduce a tempo at which any subject in these sorts of experiments moves at. So establish their like normal tempo and then fudge with it. Like mess it up. Put them in an environment or a situation or a condition where you can confuse the brain a little bit around that and see what happens. Because I'd be very, 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 very interested to see if there is an effect. Any effect whatsoever, number one. Like, does the brain do anything different that is noteworthy? I'd just be very, very interested in that. Okay. Let's go. Oh, gosh, some of this I've already read. All right. All right, we got anoetic conscious. Okay, so for now, I've got this all anyway. Okay. According to Tolvien, remembering is an expression of an autonoetic consciousness and hence retrieval from episodic memory. And knowing is an expression of noetic consciousness and hence retrieval from semantic memory, which is basically the same region of your brain, just so you can note that, basically. Whereas this other stuff, the sequential thing, is a different region. Huh. Interesting. Okay. Thus, retrieval from both systems. Well, both systems are buddies, is what I'm saying. Performance and recognition tests, among other things. Into semantic and episodic is serial. Storage is parallel, yes. And retrieval is independent. I think that's fair. Yeah, okay. I'll just read that. Given some minimal registration of, this is also very old, a registration of the occurrence of an event, that event may only be stored in the semantic system. I don't know about that. I'm more suspicious that you can have the semantic and episodic system working and the disconnect being in some sort of a spatial working memory, and that we actually switch between those, and that's going to be your anoetic, I believe is what they're calling it, consciousness. So autonoetic and noetic are kind of more of a unit, and the disconnect would be typically if you have a disorder, potentially, like I do, in the anoetic system, which is, if you go over here, where did we have that? I had one of them. This. So this is the older one. This is what they think, but I think you can get away with this being busted. Kind of busted. I mean, obviously, but I think you can use something in here. Like, I think you can still have some sensory input getting processed, but if you have a sensory processing disorder, then what's happening here? Something different has to be happening here, and I'm suggesting that you fuck out of this train. You're just like bink. Like, yeah, I think there's no procedural memory, and maybe you just like pop over here and stay over here. Like, is this how are you doing? Is that what that is? I don't know. Do you like psychology or neuroscience more, Jane? I'm not sure if it's the same. There's neuropsychology. So you could always just marry the two of them together. I certainly, well, yeah, so I could just say I like neuropsychology. Neuroscience is newer than psychology in a sense. So, yeah, neuropsychology is my answer to that. psychology was like us coming out of the caves of fucking Plato and shit, or Aristotle, whoever made that up. Aristotle's cave. Is that right? Yeah. So, well, we kind of do, like, religion and philosophy fight for a while, and then psychology steps in, psychoanalytics to begin with, and then that develops into other things and different modalities, and neuroscience starts to kick up at some point during that process. Let's see. Neuro focuses more on the inside science in the brain. Psych focuses more on behavior itself. Yeah, and psychology is geared towards interventions for what we would consider to be maladaptive behavior. So once a behavior reaches a certain threshold where you're having negative consequences that are consistent. Psychology is also, that's abnormal psych. So usually psychology, when we say psychology, a lot of times we really mean abnormal psychology, abnormal psych. So we're most interested in when somebody's behavior is creating conflicts with their goals or their stated goals or typical goals. Their goal may be to be the lizard queen, but you're like, odd goal. So, psychology is interested in investigating questions of behavior and the will of the person, as well as the expectations of behavior that are in their environment. So psychology gets into stuff like, my mom was, for example, an industrial organizational psychologist. So then you can ask questions about the psychology of groups. So psychology is like minds, what we consider to be a mind, and variances in the behavior that we can only explain by looking at the mind. The mind is sort of this vague, somewhat emergent thing that has also been called a soul, right? So the property of our consciousness, I'll say, is looked at in psychology in regards to our behavior, and especially when the behavior seems to be creating problems and the person is no longer able to meet the expectations of society. So neuroscience, on the other hand, is just like, what up, brain? Neuroscience will go into all of that. Like, there's the idea is that there's like a neuroscientific basis for anything happening because you live in material reality and your brain is a physical organ. And you are your brain. You're everything, but your brain is basically creating all of the behavioral patterns that psychology deals with. So, but you wouldn't see a neuroscientist to deal with maladaptive patterns of behavior or to get insights about goals that you may have that are being short-circuited or interrupted by phenomenon that psychology has created names for and categories for, and you can get different diagnoses. So for example, a neuropsychological evaluation is what you would need to assess for all conditions, including autism and traumatic brain injury, all kinds of stuff. So you could have a neuropsychological evaluation, a neuropsych eval, right? And that's going to look at as many things as we can possibly know about the brain, using as many disciplines as have terms for the brain. But it's more a matter of like, what do you need? Like, I would say that psychology develops in response to the need that people have to create adaptive behaviors and to have a manageable life, more or less, and asks questions about when people's behaviors become unmanageable, and also can ask questions about typically behaving brains and minds, and sort of get an idea of like, well, what's normal. It's so a psychologist could also be pretty interested in population studies to get a sense. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? And then a neuroscientist is going to possibly want to interact with the exact same questions, but start to create a system of understanding and labeling the aspects of your brain anatomy and activity. Great. Excellent. So neuropsychology does both of those simultaneously, which obviously is not a huge leap to do. It's just, you just ask a different set of questions typically, and you have a different objective. Okay. Do you want music back? Nah, fuck music. We're doing study mode. Okay. Storage. Okay. Given some minimal registration of the occurrence of an event, the event may only be stored in the semantic system. I'm going to need this. Okay. So how does that happen now? Hold on. Why did they say that happened? Given some minimal registration of the occurrence of an event. I don't know exactly what that would... I don't know what that would entail. What are you talking about? That event may only be stored in the semantic system. Huh? Wait, how do you... What? But all of the information we get is from our sense organs. What? Huh? Huh? Okay, I'm a little confused what they're saying. I must not have the backdrop to, first of all, make sense of this. Also, maybe what? Given more attention at encoding and more conscious control, I hate that a little bit, the event may be further encoded into episodic memory. I see. What? Oh, I see. So they were still saying that sensory... Okay, so they were still saying that this... They haven't mentioned anoetic consciousness, but I would assume they are saying that. They just skipped that step. Okay, so then it can stay in semantic and not go to episodic. Why? Okay. And is that... I think that would be typical developing. See, and then an autistic person, I would say, always goes over through both of them because they need both of them to make up for the anoetic shit not really being there to support them in procedural tasks. Okay, giving some minimal registration. So they're basically saying, like, you're not being observant. Okay, so when people focus, does that click on procedural memory a bit more? Is that possibly what we're saying here? Maybe. Events may be stored in both systems, but retrieved independently from them. Sure, okay. Tolvien also proposed the coordination hypothesis, which concerns the relation between awareness at encoding and awareness at retrieval. According to this hypothesis, the retrieval of information from a system is possibly only at a level of awareness that does not exceed the level of awareness achieved at encoding. But what about repeated exposure? What happens then? Or repeat exposure to something similar? What about, like, concept bridging to something similar? In other words, it is not possible for retrieval of information that has only been encoded into the semantic system to give rise to autonoetic awareness, episodic memory. However much time and conscious effort goes into the retrieval attempt. I don't know about that. So that's past me understanding it. I'm reading again. But what about your imagination? I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Much of the evidence is consistent with this account, but more critical to it is recent evidence concerning the underlying neuroanatomical substrates of episodic and semantic systems. One sec, I need to polish the word substrates. It's pretty good, but I just want to double that up. Substrates. Neural substrate is a term used in neuroscience to indicate the part of the central nervous system that underlies a specific behavior, cognitive process, or psychological state. Neural is an adjective. Okay. Underlying substance. Okay, got it. Sort of like the location in the brain. Okay. Form. Alright, where were we? Much of the evidence is consistent with this account, but more critical neural and anatomical substrates of episodic and semantic systems. For example, in an event-related potentials study, showed that whereas some minimal level of encoding with divided attention is sufficient to lead to knowing and recognition memory, remembering depends on more extensive brain activity, including sustained interaction of frontal and posterior regions. Other studies to be discussed later have provided evidence that implicates hippocampal as well. That's gotten super implicated by now, as well as frontal regions of brain and remembering. And there is increasing evidence of functional disassociations between remembering and knowing at the level of the brain. Okay, that's pretty old. Okay, we're gonna just read all of these. Okay. I'm gonna be reading all day. Okay, have a good one. Bye. When compared to AUD subjects, Korsakoff patients have qualitatively the same patterns of episodic deficits. AUD? What is AUD? Alcohol use disorder? Oh, episodic memory deficits occur in alcohol use disorder, but their anatomical substrates remain in question. Oh, we're back to substrates. Although persistent memory impairment is classically associated with limbic circuitry disruption, learning and retrieval of new information also relies on frontal systems. Interesting. Interesting. AUD, alcohol use disorder, were impaired on all memory scores and had smaller prefrontal, frontal, and hippocampal volumes than controls on both sides, I assume. Orbital superior and inferior frontal volumes and lifetime alcohol consumption were independent predictors of episodic memory in AUD. Selectivity was established with a double discussion where orbital frontal volume predicted verbal but not visual memory. Whereas inferior frontal volumes predicted visual but not verbal memory. Visual spatial, I would argue. Potentially. Further, superior frontal volumes predicted verbal memory in AUD alone, whereas orbital frontal volumes predicted verbal memory in AUD plus drug abuse history. Interesting. Okay. I wonder if people who have... So I've had people who like use substances kind of get along with me. I wonder if it's because they have some memory impairments and they're like, I feel more comfortable with you, Jane. Person with some memory impairments. Okay. Let's go back to this. Okay. When compared with AUD subjects, Korsakoff patients. What is Korsakoff? Oh, Korsakoff syndrome, also known as a Korsakoff amnesiac syndrome, is a memory disorder that results from vitamin B1 deficiency and is associated with alcoholism. Korsakoff syndrome damages nerve cells and supporting brain cells in the brain and spinal cord, as well as part of the brain involved with memory, problems learning new information, and ability to remember recent events, and long-term memory gaps. Interesting. Huh. Okay. So that's interesting. Context memory and Korsakoff syndrome is another thing I could look at. Okay. And that's looking in much of the regions that I'm interested in. Okay. Context memory hypothesis. That's something I may need to read too. Damn. In brief, there is now abundant. Let me pull this over here. In brief, there's now, this is from a while back. In brief, there is now abundant evidence that both temporal context memory and spatial context memory are disproportionately impaired in Korsakoff patients. However, the degree of impairment in these two types of context memory does vary from study to study, and it may well be the case that differing pathways and projections are involved in these impairments. Projections to and from the lateral frontal cortices may be particularly critical in producing the temporal context memory impairment, and projections to and from the hippocampi, especially on the right, may be particularly critical to the spatial context memory deficit. Interesting. I have questions about the right hippocampi, by the way, already. Or the right hippocampus, whatever, not campi, that's both. Context memory is an important component of recollection, i.e. the conscious retrieval of information from long-term memory. And in recent years, debate as to whether a context memory deficit underlies Korsakoff patients' memory impairment has become assimilated into the wider debate about the role of the extended hippocampal circuitry in recollection and familiarity-based memory processes. Okay, we can deal with that later, if I need to. Okay. All right, let's go back over here. However, quantitatively, the two groups differ in the severity of the episodic memory impairments. In addition, encoding processes are disproportionately altered compared with the other episodic memory components only in Korsakoff patients. As mentioned, for structural damage of the thalamus, some AUD subjects without any clinically detectable amnesia have episodic memory performance close to that of Korsakoff patients. Once again, it is crucial to detect these patients at risk to develop Korsakoff syndrome and to offer them preventative treatment. In agreement with neuroimaging data indicating that the two groups present quite similar abnormalities in the frontal cerebellar circuit. I never know what I'm saying with this. AUD subjects and Korsakoff patients do not differ on working memory and executive performance. Interesting. The diagnosis between AUD without neurological complication and Korsakoff syndrome should therefore rely on the severity of the episodic memory disorder with consequences in daily life, and not on the presence or absence of associated cognitive deficits. Another difference between the two groups is the recovery of cognitive performance and notably episodic memory abilities with abstinence or drastic reduction of alcohol consumption in AUD subjects, while amnesia is definitive in Korsakoff syndrome. Interesting. Autobiographical memory and consciousness. Cognitive feelings, remembering, familiarity, and knowing. When a specific autobiographical memory comes to mind, then a rememberer has recollective experience. That is, they experience remembering consciously and have what has been termed autonoetic consciousness. Typically, images enter conscious awareness, often visual in nature, attention turns inward, other highly specific knowledge may also feature too, and there's a strong sense of the self in the past. Additionally, there is a distinct, this is from 2009, pretty old. Additionally, there's a distinct feeling of remembering, a feeling that what is in consciousness is a memory. Okay, such feelings are part of a class of mental experience that have been termed cognitive feelings. Cognitive feelings let us experience our mental states, and without them we would have to, perhaps consciously and laboriously, infer what state we were in at any given time. Thus, the feeling of remembering, triggered by mental content such as visual images of past experiences, lets us know automatically and experientially that we are remembering. No further inferential reasoning is required to determine that state or the state. The conscious feeling of remembering may be important too in convincing a person that they are indeed remembering and then to act on that. To give a trivial but not uncommon example, if a person remembers that they locked the door when they left the house, To give a trivial but not uncommon example, if a person remembers that they locked the door when they left the house, it may be that a visual image comes to mind and perhaps other details. They left out a word. And they may have a feeling of remembering then that, And they have a feeling of remembering then they almost certainly would not, and if they have a feeling of remembering then, they almost certainly would not go back to check. what happened here? This sentence got bad. That doesn't work, right? To give a trivial but not common, person remembers when they left the house. Maybe a visual image comes to mind. Maybe a visual image comes to mind, or perhaps other details, and they have a feeling of remembering. Then they almost certainly would not. And they have okay. It says it should be maybe, not maybe. That's what went wrong here. There just is a space. If a person remembers that they locked the door when they left the house, maybe a visual image comes to mind and perhaps other details, and they have a feeling of remembering, then they almost certainly would not go back to check. Sure. There was an if then, and the maybe threw me off. If, however, see, the feeling of remembering was not triggered by the knowledge brought into consciousness, then determining whether what is in consciousness is in fact a memory and not, for instance, a generic visual image or set of images is more difficult and in some cases perhaps not possible at all, in which case the probability of repeating one's actions is increased. Okay. The feeling of remembering and autonoetic consciousness may then have quite powerful, direct, and important effects on behavior. The conscious experience of remembering can be contrasted with other states of memory awareness. For example, feelings of familiarity and knowing occur when autobiographical knowledge is brought to conscious awareness without associated episodic memories. The conscious experience of remembering can be contrasted with other states of memory awareness. For example, feelings of familiarity and knowing occur when autobiographical knowledge is brought to conscious awareness without associated episodic memories. Okay. Remembering a school attended, the name of a friend, a work project, a holiday, a repeated event, etc., without remembering any single specific event is associated with familiarity and knowing, but not with recollective experience. So semantics, right? I'm just going to be sitting here doing this. Okay, have a good work day. Nobody has to be here. I will just sit here. Remembering a school attended, the feeling of holiday or repeated event, etc., without remembering any single specific event is associated with familiarity and knowing, but not with recollective experience. This type of remembering features what has been termed noetic consciousness. Okay. Yeah, semantics, right? Noetic consciousness does not feature specific representations of the self in the past, such as those that are represented in episodic memories. Noetic consciousness cannot then trigger the feeling of remembering, although, as we will shortly see, this may occur in malfunctions of memory. Interesting. Cognitive feelings characteristic of noetic states appear to be related partly to orienting processes and partly to meta-memory functions. A person's face, for example, might trigger a feeling of familiarity and lead to a meta-memory inference that the person has been recently encountered. This may prime the memory system for detailed recollection if current tasks come to require that, on the other hand, it may not lead to full recollection, so reduce the attentional costs that would be incurred by constructing a full and detailed memory and consciousness. This feeling of familiarity of recent occurrence may then serve to optimize cognitive performance and keep processing online and task-oriented while still supporting some recognition of past occurrence. Okay. I know that the face and habitat space and face triggerings, they're both triggering this like spatial memory, visual spatial memory. In a similar way, a more pervasive feeling of familiarity triggered by features of an individual's habitual environment may facilitate orientation to that environment and fluent processing of it. In other words, this feeling of familiarity of the habitual may reduce attentional and processing demands on cognition and consciousness by signaling what does not need close attention and more detailed processing. It is particularly interesting that many brain-injured patients... Okay. Interesting. Who are disoriented. Okay. Many brain-injured patients who are disoriented in time and space often claim that everything is unfamiliar, as though the feeling of familiarity triggered by the habitual had in some way been disfacilitated. There may well be further shades of cognitive feelings here related to familiarity in the temporal dimension. For example... Okay. For example, a conscious feeling triggered by the beginnings and endings of events, the feeling that events are proceeding fluently. Okay. See, this is interesting to me. I wonder about that. Would be messed up. Okay. Feeling that one's autobiographical memory is continuous, anticipatory feelings of imagined future events, which share activation of many of the brain regions that are activated with remembering correct, episodic memory and imagination are the same damn thing in many regards, are all memory-related cognitive feelings that await further investigation. That has been investigated since this time. The feeling of knowing may be more associated with meta-memory functions than with orientation, and again, there seem to be two functions of this feeling. One is to let us feel what it is we know, and other is to let us feel what we might know. For example, during the process of learning at university, students initially rely on memories of knowledge presented in lecture, encountered in books, in conversation with teachers, or even in conversation with each other. Later, however, as they acquire knowledge, they no longer depend on memories of times when knowledge was encountered and instead come to just know. That is, they just know, if they are psychology students, that the behaviorists rejected introspectionism. Freud discovered the unconscious. And I hate that. And with subjects designed, the same participants take part in all the experimental conditions, and so on. Verification of these facts is accompanied by a feeling of knowing, a feeling that lets the individual know that they know experientially and without having to engage in further extended processing. People just know that Paris is the capital of France, that last year's holiday was on a Greek island, that they once lived in London, and so on. Conversely, there is knowledge in long-term memory that is available but not currently accessible to consciousness, usually because an appropriate cue cannot be located that would activate the knowledge to a level where it could enter consciousness and be experienced as known. Nonetheless, extensive evidence shows that people can discriminate on the basis of a feeling of knowing between items that they would be able to recognize and even remember with an effective cue from those they would not be able to recognize or remember even with a cue. Presumably, this is because the knowledge in long-term memory is sufficiently activated to trigger a feeling of knowing but not support incorporation of that item in a conscious representation. Were such an available item to become consciously accessible, then there is nothing to preclude it triggering the just no feeling state. The relation between the feelings these same items trigger when they eventually do enter consciousness is not known. The relation between the feeling of knowing for temporarily inaccessible items and the feelings these same items trigger when they eventually do enter consciousness. Okay, so here we go. Episodic and semantic autobiographical memory. This is from 2022. Yay! Where am I? There's a lot more to read on this. I think I can power through this page. Okay. Autobiographical memory can be broken down into episodic and semantic subcomponents. This distinction is rooted in the work of Tolvien, who defines semantic memory as the ability to retrieve general facts that are abstract from the context in which they are learned, e.g., I remembered that I was a student at the university. On the other hand, episodic memory is the ability to retrieve specific events situated in time and space, e.g., I remember that lecture in which that professor explained memory function. Critically, episodic retrieval triggers what Tolvien coins mental time travel, i.e., the ability to mentally project oneself in time to relive the past or even imagine the future. According to Tolvien, this ability triggers a state of autonoetic consciousness, i.e., the phenomenological sense of experiencing oneself being present at the time when the remembered event originally took place. Autonoetic consciousness can be contrasted with noetic consciousness, which characterizes semantic memory. Compared with autonoetic consciousness, noetic consciousness involves a more abstract sense of time as well as a general awareness of knowing and understanding the world and the self. The distinction between autonoetic and noetic consciousness also involves differences regarding several phenomenological features such as mental imagery. Mental imagery is the ability to create mental representations in the mind. Mental imagery is intimately associated with the phenomenological experience of episodic memory. The more vivid the image, the stronger the autonoetic experience. Mental imagery thus contributes to the specificity of autobiographical retrieval, and this idea is that, like autistic people think in pictures, realness and vividness of autobiographical retrieval. The combination of mental imagery to autobiographical construction was highlighted by Conway and Playdell Pierce, who suggested that mental imagery provides rich contextual, perceptual, and or sensorial information that acts as a powerful cue in the retrieval of specific and vivid autobiographical events. Overall, autobiographical memory can be fundamentally divided into episodic and semantic subcomponents. While semantic autobiographical memories involve retrieval of general knowledge, episodic autobiographical memories involve retrieval of specific events and a stronger subjective experience involving significant time travel as well as vivid mental images of the retrieved events. Interesting. All right, we'll read this one. Tolkien also added to the list of ways to distinguish episodic from semantic memory. This is from 83. Indeed, the original list was expanded to include 28 differentiating features. These features were divided into 3 broad categories. 1, the type of information processed by the systems. 2, the characteristics of their operations. And 3, application in the laboratory as well as in the real world. Although not emphasized by Tolkien, other factors can explain differences between the 2 memory systems. For example, people are typically exposed to semantic information more than to episodic information, and this may make it less vulnerable to disruption. Yet another... Ooh, interesting. That's interesting for autism and savantism. Yet another quality proposed to set apart episodic from semantic memory, the 2 from procedural memory was consciousness. And the 2 from procedural memory was consciousness. Right. And yet another procedural memory is what I'm really interested in. Yet another quality proposed to set apart episodic from semantic memory, and the 2 from procedural memory was consciousness. Procedural memory was associated with anoetic, non-knowing consciousness, which is temporarily and spatially restricted to the current situation. Organisms that possess anoetic consciousness were thought to be able to perceive, internally represent, and respond behaviorally to their internal and external environment. Semantic memory was characterized by noetic, knowing consciousness, allowing organisms to act on their symbolic knowledge of the world in a flexible manner, and to be aware of and perform cognitive processes on objects and events and the relations among them in their absence. Episodic memory was associated with autonoetic self-knowing consciousness. Autonoetic consciousness enables individuals to appreciate their subjective experience in relation to time. What does that do for time and place cells, if that's true? Okay. It is deemed necessary for recollection or remembering to occur as it provides the phenomenological quality of transporting oneself across time to mentally relive an event. As a consequence, when one remembers an event, he or she is aware that he or she experienced it personally in the past. This subjective awareness is not restricted to remembering the past. It also applies to imagining future personal experiences, and thus has been described as enabling mental time travel. Early neuroimaging work supported the distinction between episodic and semantic memory, and will be discussed further in section Episodic and Semantic Memory as a Biological Reality. Another form of consciousness proposed more recently by Tolkien, 2002, that is intimately tied to autonoetic consciousness and episodic memory is chronesthesia. Tolkien proposed that chronesthesia enables one to think about subjective time and to be aware of the temporal dimension of one's existence as well as that of others, whether in the past, present, or future. Although autonoetic consciousness and chronesthesia are both concerned with the awareness of self and time, what distinguishes them is the relative emphasis on self versus time. Okay. Tolkien argued that the distinction may be subtle, but it is nonetheless necessary because the concept of self can be dealt with independently from the concept of time and vice versa. Can it? I don't know about that. Yet another feature that distinguishes the different types of memory, according to Tolkien, is their hierarchical order. In Elements 83, depicted propositional memory, of which episodic memory and semantic memory are a part, and procedural memory at the top of the hierarchy, which I'm like, what? However, as mentioned in section, this 1972 distinction, episodic memory was later reconceptualized as a subcategory of semantic memory, and semantic memory in turn was reconceptualized as a subcategory of procedural memory. God, that's old. The implications of this hierarchical, I don't like hierarchies, scheme are significant, kind of. One cannot possess episodic memory without semantic memory. It's just an odd metaphor that I'm always ready to question. Okay, so one cannot possess episodic memory without semantic memory, and one cannot possess semantic memory without procedural memory. But then procedural memory is further split. So that's the problem that I'm going to currently have with this, is that procedural memory is... I disagree. I disagree. That just doesn't, I don't think so. Conversely, it is possible for one to possess procedural memory without semantic memory and semantic memory without episodic memory. I don't know about that. What if procedural memory doesn't work? However, as much as there is, see, this is where I think it fell apart. So this is happening in 83, and I'm saying I think there's something wonked about procedural memory for me. And you think that this is necessary for the other types of memory that I have strengths in. That's not great. However, as much as there is a need for previous semantic memories to help structure and interpret incoming details of personal experience, there's a need for personal experiences from which commonalities are extracted to form semantic memories. Yeah, concept formation, the concept cascade. Although totally will accommodate the former, the latter is also viable as well. Interesting. I'm definitely not buying that book. It's very old. Okay, so let's go. Okay, meditation. Non-representational reflexivity. The non-representational reflexivity is the non-conceptual knowing inherent to non-dual awareness that differentiates it from anoetic, noetic, and autonoetic consciousness that are based on conceptual knowing. What is this? The non-representational reflexivity is the non-conceptual knowing inherent to non-dual awareness? What's a non-dual awareness? That's a new one. We're somewhere new. What is this thing? Okay. I'm gonna finish this page and then get it out of my queue. What the fuck is this? What? Why am I ending up in Hinduism? What? Okay. It makes... what? It makes it similar, although not the same, to supranoetic consciousness in Western Neoplatonic mysticism? Oh, fuck that. What? I don't think I want to do Neoplatonic mysticism. Like, no thanks. I should have seen that coming, honestly. Non-dual awareness. If we're going into duality, I'm not shocked. Oh, fuck that. What? Oh, I don't like this. What is this? Why does this sound like woo-woo? I mean, it's meditation, I guess. I don't know what I was expecting. What? All right, I guess I'll read this. I don't like this one. Okay. Neoplatonic what the fuck? Oh, I'm not gonna like this. I'm not gonna like this. I already know I'm not. boy. Third century by Plotinus. Oh, great. Oh boy. Plato's philosophy with religious spin. Oh, yay. I thought that was Christianity. Isn't it? Isn't that how they got packaged? Maybe this is the roots of that, and it's by a different name that I didn't know. Good lord. I'm upset. Okay. As latter can be saturated with imagination and affective states directed toward a deity. Anoetic consciousness is thought to be pre-linguistic, but from the perspective of non-dual awareness, it is still conceptual, irrespective of how primitive those concepts are, as its contents are conditioned by the substrates. Okay. Reflexivity of consciousness in general has been discussed extensively both in the context of non-dual contemplative practices and in the Western philosophy of mind. In the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, the debate has been centered on whether reflexivity is innate to non-dual awareness, or whether for awareness to know itself, a subsequent moment of cognition is necessary that takes that awareness as its object. Since such cognition is conceptual, on this second view, non-dual awareness cannot be reflexive, and if it is, then it is non-dual awareness itself. It is not non-dual awareness itself. In light of recognition by the early Advaita I'm going to butcher this. Advaita, Vedanta, and Dzogchen traditions that the inherent non-conceptual reflexivity of non-dual awareness necessarily implies a self. What? The inherent non-conceptual reflexivity. Okay, fuck. What? Okay. What? What? First of all, reflexivity. I just need... What is this? Why? What? During first examination of one's own beliefs, judgments, and practices during the research process and how these may have influenced the research. Well, this is clearly something else. That's for psychologists and researchers, I guess. A qualitative researcher. Okay. Reflexivity is finding strategies to question our own attitudes, thought processes, values, assumptions, prejudices, and habitual actions to try to understand our complex roles in relation to others. Okay. Oh boy. Okay. Inherent non-conceptual reflexivity of non-dual awareness necessarily implies a self. However different that self may be from the ordinary constructed self, this second view can be understood as a literal commitment to the no-self doctrine, according to which all self is a constructed self. Oh boy, I disagree with everything here being a good model. In Western perspectives, reflexivity is associated with autonoetic consciousness. It is? Okay. Sure. Okay. And seen as either the introspective metacognitive ability dependent on re-representation, mental time travel backwards, or as a more immediate sense of self-knowing that involves some type of recurrent processing of a cognitive state, for example, a semantic schema of a recursive regime that processes its own capacity to represent. Okay. These theories have several attractive features, the main being that the system is informing itself about its own state. Here, capacity to represent, which is something we have suggested previously for non-dual awareness. Now I'm lost, but that's okay. The main difference is that these models are schema-based representation models, even though the schemas are thought to represent the system's own representational capacity rather than representations of contents. Yes, okay. Non-dual awareness, in contrast, is not a schema-based cognition. This situation is reminiscent of an old truism from contemplative traditions, which says that one needs the mind to look for non-dual awareness, but in the end has to let go of the mind to know it. Okay. During moments of minimal phenomenal experience, one can get close to non-dual awareness, ayahuasca, and retroactively know that it was there, but without it reflexivity. What? Retroactively know that it was there. Okay. Without it reflexivity activating? Okay. Without awareness recognizing itself. There's a typo there, I think. Or I don't know how they're using this word, but that looks wrong. In such instances, although conceptual processes have quieted down and the mind is silent. Okay. The substrate is still present and non-dual awareness has not yet encountered itself. Oh boy. I hate this. But once the reflexivity of non-dual awareness is activated, non-dual awareness cannot go back and unknow itself. Once it has self-recognized clearly, this knowing is direct and non-conceptual, by which it knows itself as that which is aware. Okay. Such self-recognition of non-dual awareness by itself has been regarded as a special type of intuitive insight in which non-dual awareness recognizes by itself its own faith. So, what if you're just making a mental representation of yourself as a thing that makes mental representations? So you're making some sort of over your experience with yourself and your instances of doing this. And couldn't you get this confused and think that you're something else? Like, couldn't you think that you're the second coming of Christ? It's bullshit. I don't know. I hate it. It's a meditation thing applied to brain research, and I hate it. I hate it. Okay. And then what about if you edit this? Can you implant false memories of the self this way, and self-awareness and whatever, and self-recognition of your thought process? Can you edit that? Like, isn't this just a concept that you're implanting into your brain about your own memories of having memories, like memories of you experiencing memories? Like, why wouldn't that also just be the same basic system? Why are they suggesting some other thing is magically happening? Why? Like, because they need it philosophically? Or else all these guys were like wasting their fucking time, kind of. Or everybody that's still obsessed with it might be wasting their fucking time. But hey, whatever. Cling to power, my guys. For non-dual awareness to know itself, for its auto-knowing to activate. I'm sorry, my eyes just need to take a rest in the back of my skull. Oh, okay, they rolled back down. It does not depend on... I don't like this. Oh boy. Who the fuck is this guy? Rabjam 1979. Who are you? I need to know. Who is this guy? A monk. It sounds like it's a monk. Yeah, it's some monk. Okay. All right. Sophistry occurred. Does not depend on whether any specific phenomenal contents are... What? For non-dual awareness to know itself, for its auto-knowing to activate. It does not depend on whether any specific phenomenal contents are present or absent, or given sufficient arousal, whether some specific or special altered state of consciousness has been generated or not. Ayahuasca! Furthermore, although introspective attention can be used to approach non-dual awareness... What? Reflexivity of non-dual awareness does not require introspective attention. Huh. As non-dual awareness is self-evident to itself. I'm going to read like this. Thus, no epistemic agent as a subject that is experiencing non-dual awareness as an object is necessary. This self-evidencing of non-representational reflexivity is also why non-dual awareness, although non-conceptual, non-reifiable. What? Did you just say that? What? That just occurred. That. Copy. Pasty. Do you know what that... You know what? You know what? Non-reifiable. What the fuck are you doing? I'm like, that's not even... Okay, I just want you... Come with me. That's not a word. That's not even a fucking word, man. I'm like, there's no way in hell. What are you doing? What are you doing? Wait, all right. I don't know what to do. This is okay. This is our popcorn for the day. What? No epistemic agent. What the fuck is an epistemic agent? For one thing, does that just mean... What does that mean? What the fuck? What? Okay. Epistemic agent is defined as an agent capable of taking epistemic stances towards epistemic elements. These stances must be taken intentionally, that is, based on a semantic understanding of the epistemic element in question and its available alternatives and reason for the purpose of acquiring knowledge. What the fuck is Oh no! Epistemic agency, a Hegelian perspective. I'm fucking out, man! No! First of all, I'm like, Scientonomy? What the hell is Scientonomy? What the fuck is Journal for the Science of Science? Is this good? What is happening? What the hell is... Where have I ended up? What is Scientonomy? What? Oh dear. What is Scientonomy? I still don't know. What is happening? What is Scientonomy? What is happening? Oh, fuck this. 1989, Scientonomy. A bold new vision for an integrated history and philosophy of science. I don't think we need that. I hate this. Okay. What? Is not phenomenally interdeterminate to itself? Holy shit. Where did we end up? Hi there, I'm reading papers. Well, this is just article summaries and chapters from books and shit. But like, what? Phenomenally interdeterminate? Who says that? Who uses that? What? Oh, hell no. Hold on. I'm upset. I also hi. What? Oh boy. Huh. How did this end up here? Oh, hello, Rowan. I'm hearing a lot of Buddhist terms and buzzy jargon. What year was this? Oh, this thing? This isn't even that old. This is from 2019. This is very woo-wah. This whole paper sounds like a college student's thesis just trying to sound way more qualified. Also, hi John. A descriptive discipline. I'm learning about memory for purposes of having a better model for how autistic people should organize goals. But good God, a descriptive discipline that attempts to uncover the actual general mechanism of scientific change. Scientonomy is defined as an academic discipline that aims to describe and explain the process of scientific change. Why? While still very much in the process of inception, it is conceived to have two major branches: theoretical, well, I'm sure it's theoretical scientonomy and observational scientonomy. Theoretical scientonomy attempts to uncover the axioms and theorems that guide the process of scientific change. Okay. Observational scientonomy attempts to trace and explain historical and contemporary instances of scientific change. Isn't that like anthropology with a fancy hat? Am I wrong? And it sounds super silly. What? I don't understand. Okay. An ethnography of scientists? I guess so, but it's very woo-woo. Like, listen to this. I'm getting back to other stuff, so we're going to get into mental time travel, and this should be way better. Even though this is from an Encyclopedia of Animal Behavior in 2010. But we're just doing overviews. I have like 180 of these to get through still. Okay. Listen to this. This self-evidencing of non-representational reflexivity is also why non-dual awareness, though non-conceptual and non-reifiable, which just upsets me because that's very much not a word, is not phenomenally indeterminate to itself. Even as it has no need or impulse to define itself in any way. Where does the impulse come from? Similarly, an analyzing mind, as opposed to other kinds of mind, can have mistaken cognitions about non-dual awareness. Oh, great! You mean this is unfalsifiable? But non-dual awareness cannot have a mistaken knowing about itself, since its reflexivity is inherent to it and not a separate intentional act. I give up. Okay, mental time travel. Can animals recall the past and plan for the future? Tulving's spoon test. I took philosophy of science and ethics and science and loved it. See, I don't like it. So I love modern neuropsychology. It's just saying science can't study itself. Well, yeah, but that's like, isn't that the whole problem of humans trying to study ourselves? That's what I'm saying. Like, anthropologists are well aware that humans trying to study humans is also something that needs to be studied by humans, of how we've studied humans. like it's like, you know what I mean? Just like, catch tail, woof, woof, woof. I don't know. That's my opinion. Okay. All right. Tulving has argued that it is possible to test whether animals are capable. Basically, we're going over episodic memory. So autonoetic consciousness, noetic consciousness, anoetic consciousness, which we can break down into semantic memory, episodic memory, which is your declarative memory, and non-declarative is going to be like procedural memory. And I think procedural memory is different in autistics. So this is why I'm like noodling around in this, because, well, at least in my case, it seems to be extremely impacted, or something acting really different in terms of me being able to understand series and sequences and use that to organize my little me towards goals. However, it seems that the semantics and the episodic stuff is intact and actually is like kind of OP'd. So I'm like, how does that happen in an autistic person? And how does that have implications for ways we can have more success in life? Because currently our under and unemployment rate is 90%. That's very bad. Like, that's not even like, I'm not even gonna pretend I'm the 10% that can beat those odds, because like, so we must change odds. So this is sort of the thrust of this. Yeah, it's quite bad. And this includes all levels of our performance on cognitive abilities. And it even gets worse for those of us who are testing as, high cognitive performance. Onomy is an ology. If an ology is the study of a particular subject, an onomy is the body of knowledge and rules surrounding a subject of study. For what it's worth, that helps to consider how its name is relevant. That's fair, yeah. Onomy is if an ology is the study of a particular subject, an onomy taxonomy is the body of knowledge and rules surrounding a subject of study. Yeah, that's fair. Okay. So this is what we're kind of messing around with. I'm also priming myself to get into this book more, which I'm going to be reading today. I have a day off. The Joy of Abstraction, an Exploration of Math, Category Theory, and Life by Eugenia Chang. She's delightful. Highly recommend already. Like she's got a joy in abstract mathematics. I was like, heck yeah. So my thinking is that for autistic people, what needs to happen is possibly we need to train in category theory is where I've sort of ended up. I need to figure out how to get YouTube to tell me when you're on. This is Dip Acid. Hi, Dip Acid! So I will figure out a system of alerting people that works better, because I do agree this is bullshit. I thought that I was like, you are familiar to me. It all makes sense now. I recognize your typey. Yeah, if you click the bell, I think you need to do a special alert on it. It's not consistent. Yeah, I mean, but we should have a different way of doing this. It's fascinating who came in and who doesn't so far, but I really appreciate you making the extra effort. I'll be here a little extra today too, because I just want to finish, I at least want to finish this page and see I have to read. And so I really like these Science Direct summaries. I love it because you end up in a whole bunch of fun places, like related terms, Asperger's. So you see what I'm saying? Like, we know this is a thing. So it gives me a sense of like the landscape. And sometimes I end up in a weird, like, what is this rabbit hole? Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, what is happening? Okay. All right. Yeah, you know what? Now I know who you are, Depacid. You might really like this book. Like, I would just say, like, go buy this. Like, go buy. If you're not currently reading a book, like, bruh. Noetic. Oh, noetic. Yeah, noetic. Autonoetic, noetic, anoetic. I looked up the root of the word and I've already forgotten it. Hold on. This is about to be ironic. Relating to mental activity or the intellect. I'm like, I don't know what it means. My noeticness isn't working. What? Okay. But noetics is a fringe branch of pseudoscience concerned with the study of the mind as well as intellect. So don't worry about that. They just happen to name some of memory as noetic, autonoetic, anoetic, but you can easily call it declarative or non-declarative memory and other things. So it's just one of many ways to like lump this stuff with different terms. Like node. Oh, node. Nordic. I'm a tiny Viking. Viking. The littlest Viking. I have Viking ancestry. Isn't that ridiculous? And I'm like this big. Okay. All right. Where were we? Haldane has argued that it is possible to test whether animals are capable of such episodic future thinking and devised what he calls the spoon test, which he argues is a future-based test of autonoetic consciousness, so episodic memory. Or mental time travel, you can call it, that does not rely on and need to be expressed through language. The test is based on an Estonian children's story. Cool. I had an Estonian ballet teacher. He's really nice. He jumped very high. He taught me to use your arms to get more upward lift. Okay. The test is based on an Estonian and the coordination when you have to the arms actually have to go slightly before the legs. Man, that really stuck with me. The test is based on, that was a long time ago. The test is based on an Estonian children's story tale in which I have a t-shirt with him on it because I went through their Lost and Found and they had a t-shirt of when he was dancing there. Anyways, in which a young girl dreams about going to a birthday party. In the dream, all of her friends are eating a delicious chocolate mousse. God damn, I would like that, which is her favorite pudding. Same. But alas, she cannot because she's me and she's in her room because she does not have a spoon with her and no one is allowed to eat the pudding unless they have their own spoon. I would lick that out of the bowl. As soon as she gets home, she finds a spoon in the kitchen, carries it up to her bedroom and hides. Carry it up. That bothers me. Or caches. and hides or caches it under her pillow in preparation for future birthday parties, and even dreams of future birthday parties for that matter. The point then is to use past experiences to take action now for an imagined future event. Sure, to pass the spoon test, an animal must act analogously to the little girl carrying her own spoon to a new party. I want to carry a spoon to a new party. Will they like me then? A spoon that has been obtained in another place and at another time. If I just obtain the right spoon from the right place, I'll have friends. I'll be the life of the party, finally! Is there any evidence that animals and young children can pass the spoon test? Although some animals, notably primates and corvids, namely the scrub jays we discussed earlier, have been shown to take actions now based on their future consequences. Most of these studies have not shown that an action can be selected with reference to future motivational states independent of current needs, as discussed in the previous section, i.e. putting yum yum. Wooden spoons are always the answer. I should just bring a really big wooden spoon and just be like, my spoon is too big. I'm funny. I know a reference from a really obscure cartoon film. Mulcahy, and Cal, I don't know, were the first to devise a spoon test for animals. In their study, a variant of species of non-human apes were first taught to use a tool to obtain a food reward that would otherwise have been out of reach before being given the opportunity to select a tool from the experimental room, which they could carry into the sleeping room for use the following morning. Although most of the subjects did choose the correct tool on some trials, the individual patterns of success for each subject was not consistent across subsequent trials, as one would expect if they had a true understanding of the task. Furthermore, the apes received a number of training trials, so reinforcement of the anticipatory act cannot be ruled out. A more convincing case of planning was provided by, I don't know about that, by the way, Osvath and Osvath. Ooh, Osvath and Osvath. It sounds like a lawyer for vampires. In a recent series of experiments, these authors demonstrated that when selecting a tool for use in the future, chimpanzees and orangutans can override immediate drives in favor of future needs. One of the most striking examples of the spoon test in animals comes from recent studies of the food caching scrub jays in the laboratory. This is kind of boring work. This is sort of not what I want. I'm going to skip this. Anticipating future events is sort of in the absence of length, there's no way of knowing whether the jay's ability to plan for future breakfast reflects episodic future thinking, in which the jays projects itself in tomorrow morning situation, or semantic future thinking, in which the jays act prospectively, but without personal mental time travel into the future. Okay, so we learned nothing. Great. We don't know. Great question. Okay, social cognitive neuroscience, clinical brain mapping. Okay. Phenomenological accounts. According to Tolving, who's come up a lot, so now I know more about the history, familiarity is closely tied, and that's a good thing to do if you're studying anything that's brand new, is like who, they all reference. Familiarity is closely tied to the phenomenal. It will also help you to realize when somebody's like bullshit, like, did Tolving get mentioned up here? I will be sad if he did, to be really honest, after all of that shit. I don't think so. So sometimes you also know when somebody's like way off the beaten path of where you would expect them to be if they're like, why aren't you ever bringing up this guy? According to Tolving, familiarity is closely tied to the phenomenological, I've had to say that so many times today, experience of noetic consciousness. When one remembers something without reliving a past episode or without mentally time traveling. This is distinguished from autonoetic consciousness. So this would also go into semantic episodic. When one is aware that one is reliving a past event, akin to recollection. Tolving devised an experimental procedure to measure these two types of experience called the Remember-Know procedure, in which participants indicate which of these two types of conscious experience accompanied each item in a recognition memory test. However, the mapping between the experimental labels know, remember and know, and the theoretical concepts of recollection and familiarity may not be one-to-one. Yeah. According to some, noetic consciousness and autonoetic consciousness are mutually exclusive. And in that one cannot experience both states simultaneously. I don't think so. In which case the mapping is bijective. Ooh, that's a fun word. Ooh, I didn't have that word before. Ooh, I got a new one. Pokemon. Gotta catch all the words. That's cool. I think it's like pretty self-explanatory, but I just want to see if we got anything I need to know. Oh, a bijective function. That's sort of familiar. That's math, though. One-to-one correspondence or invertible function is a function between the elements of two sets where each element is paired. Bijection, also known as bijective function. Oh, okay. One is, yeah. It's sort of like an analogous thing where this exactly is paired with this. Huh. Surjective. Jesus Christ. In mathematics, a bijection, also known as a bijective function, one-to-one correspondence. Yeah, okay. Or invertible function. That one-to-one correspondence is easier. And knowable and known. Is a function between the elements of two sets where each element of one set is paired with exactly one element on the other set. Of the other set, sorry. And each element of the other set is paired with exactly one element of the first set. There are no unpaired elements between the two sets. It's a word match that's very simple. In mathematical terms, a bijective function, function x to y, x arrow y, is a one-to-one injective and onto surjective mapping of a set x to a set y. Is a function. Okay. So in other words, every element of the function's codomain is the image of at least one element of its domain. So that's surjective mapping of a set x to set y. Set x to set y. Now I know that's a problem. Wow, set x to set y is not a fun thing to say as a human. The term one-to-one correspondence must not be confused with one-to-one function. Okay, well that's good enough. Alternatively, a recollected item might also always be familiar, in which case remembered judgments will be a subset of no judgments, or a recollection and familiarity could be processes that occur independently, so that a remembered judgment can sometimes be accompanied by familiarity and sometimes not. And this would be interesting for autism, blah. Traumatic brain injury, part 2, autobiographical memory. Autobiographical memory refers to memory of personal events. This type of memory is highly valued by patients and caregivers as it contains knowledge about the self and personal identity. A study from Paolino and collaborators revealed that patients with TBI have deficits in autobiographical memory compared to healthy controls. Indeed, patients with TBI displayed dysfunctions in autonoetic consciousness, the ability to mentally place oneself in the past, and self-perspective, the ability to perceive oneself as a continuous entity across time. Neuropsychological studies of patients with TBI have shown that autobiographical memory involves a widespread cerebral network. This network comprises the anterior frontal temporal regions. Furthermore, white matter integrity is related to the autobiographical memory. A study of living... Okay, that's sort of not that interesting. Severe diffuse axonal damage impaired autobiographical memories in the recovery. Okay, almost there. Last one. Cognitive Psychology of Memory, 2017. Learning and Memory Comprehensive Reference, 2nd edition. Episodic and Semantic Memory. In 1972, Tulving made a distinction between semantic and episodic memory. In this conceptualization, semantic memory is information gleaned from experience that is no longer tied to the specific context in which it was learned, such as the knowledge that Paris is the capital of France. In contrast, episodic memory retains its bonds to a specific time and place. Thank you. I first went to Paris on my honeymoon. Tulving argued that episodic memory retained two components that differentiated it from semantic memory: the tie to a specific time and place, and autonoetic consciousness, the phenomenon of a self-experiencing the event in reminiscing, what has come to be called mental time travel. Importantly for our arguments, to a large extent, the empirical literature has identified episodic memory with autobiographical memory. Okay. There are many problems with this conceptualization. Most importantly, not all episodic memory is autobiographical, and not all autobiographical memory is episodic. In terms of the former, we argue that Tulving's two criteria for episodic memory are dissociable. One might have knowledge of specific time and place at which an experience occurred, but still not have any autonoetic consciousness. We know from a great deal of excellent animal research that non-human animals are able to remember specific occurrences, including quite specific information about when and where an event occurred. There is no question that animals must be able to recall specific episodes to survive. However, we argue that the ability to tag an episode by space and time does not yet meet the criteria for autobiographical memory. What was that? It's interesting how quickly one can lead to the other. Like if someone asks me why I think something, I have to tie it to an episode, I feel like. So anatomically speaking, I think that's because semantic and episodic memory are functioning in the same region of your brain. So you should be able to have pretty quick connections there, because you're just kind of already there in your brain. You're not making a huge jump to another section of your brain. And my argument is that I think typically developing brains are able to jump from semantic episodic region over to sequential region and then back and forth, and other people cannot get that jump successfully. Or maybe if they do jump, there's a misfire immediately and it leads to bad, and you can't really use it. So you have to go back to this other region that's responsible for episodic and semantic memory. Yeah, so that's my current working theory. I'm calling it bookends for the time being. I can get into that in a bit. There is no, well, it's my hypothesis, really. It's not really at the level of a theory, but it's a hypothesis that I'm testing in my really weird way. There is no question that animals must be able to recall specific episodes to, what? Survive? Yeah, okay. However, we argue that the ability to tag an episode by space and time does not yet meet the criteria for autobiographical memory. Autobiographical memory requires Tulving's second characteristic, autonoetic awareness. Autonoetic awareness requires at least 3 characteristics in addition to specific space and time information. Autonoetic consciousness, by definition, implies a sense of self as an experiencer of the event. More precisely, an animal can have a representation of a past event in mind with no awareness of the self as the experiencer of the event. This would be what Nelson, 2013, has called direct experience, a simple representation of the past with no conscious awareness of it being recalled. It is simply known. In contrast, an autobiographical memory is a memory of self. There is an awareness that there is an entity in the present recalling the experience in the past. This requires first that there is a current representation of self that has the phenomenological experience of recalling a previous event. I was talking about this earlier, actually. So you know you can do that. There is an awareness. Okay, so where are we? Okay, this requires first that there is a current representation of self that has the phenomenological experience of recalling a previous event. That is, the phenomenological experience of remembering as distinct from knowing or imagining. Second, so you know that you do this. Second, there must be a representation of a previous self as the experiencer of the event being remembered, that is, a current self recalling a previous self. I am remembering something that happened to me as an entity that existed in the past, not something that simply happened or happened to someone else. This in turn requires that there must be an explicit link between the current self as rememberer and the previous self as experiencer to connect the previous event as something that happened to the current self. Thus, there must be some, you're understanding that your experience as an experiencer hasn't deviated very much. You're still you experiencing in the way that you experience. So it's pretty quick logic tree there. Thus, there must be some representation of continuity of self over time, right? But wouldn't that be recursive? It's like, I'm pretty much still me. An animal may be well aware that a particular food is found, and the change is gradual enough that we may not, maybe we sit down and are like, I was pretty different at 18. Like, you can figure that out or something, depending on how old you are. An animal may be well aware that a particular food is found at a particular location and may even be able to determine whether that food was previously I'd also wonder what that does for people who changed drastically because they did something they regret and then changed a lot, or have a past that had problems that they since resolved. I think the separation of time is tied to the difference of self in some way. Yeah, so the idea is that, like, perhaps we have a sense of ourself moving. It's like, so embodied, like literally moving at a certain rate. And senses of, like, when we have changes to that rate that are predictable, like sleeping, maybe we walk, maybe we dance, maybe we run, maybe we do stuff on a consistent basis, and maybe that changes gradually over time. And we have a sense of time changing because we have this rate that we tend to move around in, and that gives us perspective since we also move through space. So we have all of these touchstones or things that we can ping to eventually create an emergent sense of self, right? Like, the part that keeps pinging back and keeps behaving in a somewhat predictable way, that's the self. Instead of, well, basically noise. Like, that's the signal, not the noise, right? Wouldn't it be like, does that make sense? Okay. Second, there must be a... okay. I'm remembering something that happened to me as an entity that existed in the past, not something that simply happened or happened to someone else. This, in turn, requires that there must be an explicit link between the current self as rememberer and the previous self as experiencer to connect the previous self as something that happened to the current self. Thus, there must be some representation of continuity of self over time. Yes, I agree with that. An animal may be well aware that a particular food is found at a particular location and may even be able to determine whether the food was previously found one day ago or many days ago, or how long it took for them to do that, moving at a rate that they typically move at without having any phenomenological awareness that the current self is recalling a past self finding and eating that food, and the past self is linked temporally and phenomenologically to current self. But then again, I think you need to incorporate the movement element. So far, that's what I got out of this today, is that the movement element doesn't seem to be noodled with. I'm like, well, I have questions about that. Episodic memory is critical for survival and certainly available across species and across human development from infancy on. But autobiographical memory requires a self recursively experiencing self over time. That's what I'm saying, or what we label autobiographical consciousness. But why would you say animals don't? Because we argue that this distinction is absolutely critical for defining autobiographical memory, we turn to a rather detailed explication of what I can't talk anymore. I can't read anymore. Autobiographical consciousness is and how it develops. Okay. Sounds like an interesting book. How expensive are you? Oh, is this a study and not a book? What? Oh. That was a book. Oh. Uh-oh. Oh, it's not getting me anywhere. Huh. Oh, purchase PDF. Fuck that. Oh, view PDF? No, I can't. Meh. It's fine. It's good enough. Okay. All right, let me save this. Da, 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 da. So this is how much progress I've made on this. This was actually for something else that I wanted to get into. Maybe I can just clean up the tabs that I don't need. Wait, how do you tab right and left? I don't even fucking know what I'm doing. Why don't I know how to do that? Okay, checking in. I have had deep thoughts about how trying to remember something is like an emotion. Well, it relies on emotion. Emotion concepts help you to understand your past experiences. Have you read How Emotions Are Made yet? And I have moments where I felt another version of myself trying to soothe myself. Oh, absolutely. I've had that as well. I think, actually, I have, yeah, a little bit of that. Just like a sense that past me would like future me is somehow calming. Well, actually, there's a lot of reasons why that would be calming. Wouldn't there be? But yeah, I also don't like the animals not having a sense of self. I'm like, I don't see how that would only emerge with humans. That seems kind of ridiculous. Just because we have tools doesn't mean that. I mean, in complexity, sure, yeah, but I don't think that, like, it makes sense to say we have a fundamental thing that just emerged out of us being able to have opposable thumbs and make complicated things out of this. But it just, I don't know. I think there is like a little seed of us that doesn't know pain and stuff. I fully disagree with that part. That part I disagree. So I believe that we are pain-based organisms, and to imagine a self that doesn't have an orientation around pain doesn't really make sense. Like, you're constantly pinging to see how much pain you're in and if there's something that you need to do about it, or if you've done something about something that you needed to do. So I think this is why I take issue with the concept of like heaven, is it's selling people on a version of humanity that is impossible, that will experience the end of pain, the cessation of pain. I'm like, whoa, no. So I think that pain and danger and threat are fundamental to how we not only find motivation, but like find any sense of awareness whatsoever. So like our awareness is an expression of pain. And our relationship to it in the present moment and in the past, and how successful we've been and how successful we think we're going to be. And if we don't think we're going to be successful, that motivates us to learn different things so that we may be successful in the future. We don't want to have excessive pain, but there's something on you that hurts a little bit if you really think about it. I've been a proponent of, I just think that why is pain negative? Right? Like, you're interpreting it as negative, right? But it's not. I think that what's negative for us is depression. So when we get distorted, we think that there's no way for us to learn. But we learn a lot in a fear state and in a threat state. We're primed to learn at that point. Similarly to when we're primed to learn because we're excited, because we feel powerful and capable and able to get something, right, that we need. So when we're motivated and when we're terrified, we're really ready to learn. Sustained pain feels like it takes up a lot of cycle. Yes, it does. So if you have a pain signal that is going, that may be more pathology, right? So chronic pain is confusing for a whole bunch of reasons as to why people have that loop. But like, just because it can go very wrong doesn't mean that there aren't treatment for it, for one. And for two, like, feeling safe removes some of the pain signal. It blunts some of the pain signal. It interrupts it. So what we're looking for is resolving when the signal isn't being interrupted naturally. And when it comes to like depression, that's when you don't have any energy whatsoever. The worst thing for us is to not have any metabolic juice to do an action. That's the worst thing for us, not pain, exhaustion, starvation, right? Not pain. The worst thing that can happen to you is you run out of nutrients and die. Like, how long do you last without food? How long do you last without water? How long can you last in pain? Right? So what's your real thing that's the issue? So what I think is debilitating for people is when they've achieved some sense of hopelessness. And so that's what I would talk to people about. Yeah, people are always weighing options against pain. That's not bad. It's just like the hopelessness will kick in if you're like, pain is bad and I must suffer it. Now you're hopeless. Now you're saying, this is something that I can never overcome. And now you're susceptible to, like the guy with the snake oil and the Ponzi scheme and the magical thinking, the silver bullet, the quick fix, the this, that, and the other. So I think that like pain is a conversation between you and your body that is really, really important. And the way that we've coded it as really, really important is not pleasant, but it's not bad. You don't have to be afraid of your own pain. So that's why I would actually say what we need to be more concerned about is like metabolic problems where we don't have the energy to do things. That's the big problem. Pain is not a problem. Pain is one of many methods towards figuring out solutions to problems. It's letting us know that we need to find a solution to a problem. And sometimes there isn't a solution to the problem, and that's an issue. But then we have to find some amount of peace with that, or else we're going to be knocked into fear and potentially hopelessness. I would agree that being debilitated is worse than pain. Right, exactly. So I want to reframe that a little bit. So I like your intention. What I would nudge it over to, I want to take that exact thing you were saying. Hoping for the positive as a replacement for fearing the negative. Right. Don't fear pain. That's what I'm saying. I agree. Fearing something that you already perceive as negative isn't very helpful. But like, pain represents hope. Pain represents that your body believes that this can be better. Otherwise, it wouldn't signal that to you at all. Your body is saying there must be a solution to this. This is not the way it's supposed to be. Right? Why would it even bother if there wasn't some hope? So I don't know. And on top of that, there's different sensations that are pain-like that you aren't actually getting hurt, but it's similar mechanisms to the one that deliver pain. So it's like, I think that you do know pain, but I think there's a seed of you that knows that pain is nothing to fear as a thing that is part of you. So you do not need to fear your ability to feel pain. Thinking about the seed, I think it's related to, so endorphins block the pain signal, amongst other things, but endorphins will, it's not that they're basically saying to the pain signal, timeout. They get a timeout, and they also get, so junkies, when somebody has a substance use disorder, what's happening, there's two things that are, I think, important to keep in mind. How quickly they go from a high pain state to a cessation, a blocking of the pain signal, how fast that occurs, how big the leap is. So like how quickly can they jump from over here to over here in terms of like that pain scale that you might see in a hospital. So they're blocking the pain signal, but they're also getting a big reward if they block a severe pain signal very fast to almost nullify it, right? If they're able to knock it out quickly, your brain's gonna be like, you found a solution. Oh, buddy, right? And the problem then is if somebody has a substance use disorder and then they experience shame, which is related to pain and fear, same region of your brain. So then if you're in shame, now you're going to a lower state and your body and brain have already learned a solution. So it's going to create more and more likelihood that this person is going to end up in this ping pong. If someone was able to meditate into a painless state, would that be unhealthy to practice? No, not necessarily. It won't last. So you can't. So if you got yourself into a painless state, we generally would call that leprosy. Like you're not getting feedback from your limbs. If you're not having something that's pain-like, then you're not experiencing, you don't feel anything. Like your nerves are broken. You have severe nerve damage, like to the point where you might be vegetative. So that would be, yeah. But if you, so it's a good practice to, for example, with meditation, find safety so that you're moderating the intensity of your fear signal, your threat signal, so that your pain signal from your tissues can be a little bit cleaner, right? So you're getting, it's not noise to have fear and threat, but it all gets blended together into one signal because it's coming from the same neural channel, pathway, origin, substrate. So it's generated as the same thing, basically, and then you have to interpret which one it is. So if you take out any fear or danger signals that you've started to cycle and loop and loop and loop and loop by using meditation or anything else that brings you into a place of safety or helps you to concentrate on something that feels safer. So like, do people tend to meditate on car accidents? Like, no. You know what I mean? So I think that practice is important, but what you're trying to do is clean up the signal, and take out some things that for now we're going to consider noise, which is just these concerns about your safety that may be unwarranted or distorted, or just simply irrelevant. Even if they're real, they just might not be something you can do anything about, right? What is that prayer that they do in AA? Grant me the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the strength to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, something like that. So yeah. So I think meditation, if you're finding some sort of serenity of that nature, that's healthy. However, the optimal thing you can hope for is to clean up the signal, to get more towards like interoception and your affect coming from like organs and stuff you need to be concerned with attending to. So you're like if you can meditate into a painless state, what happens when you get hungry? That's pain. Your stomach being empty and you need food, that is a pain signal. Especially if you get hungry enough, you will definitely know that's a pain signal. So then you really, if you don't have that signal, you'll just die. Your brain is like being like, this is an emergency. We're in the threat state. This is a danger to our life. Hello. So yeah, why would you tell your like sense of yourself, right? Like this thing that sort of is an emergent property, the thing that is supposed to be monitoring and creating this level of complexity that is appropriate for the complexity of our world that you now call yourself, right? That thing is now yelling at your body to not give it signals. Like, huh? Like, I don't like it. And like, this is why I don't like our current thinking that's so far away from embodied cognition, where everyone wants to be a vat in a jar. I'm like, no, you don't. First of all, you can't be. Also, no, you don't. We just have a model that isn't assisting us in having more insight. So I would just say that, like, pain, you're a pain-based organism, and we just have concepts about pain that are scary. So then we get scared to think about pain because it gets to be too painful to think about pain. That's the problem. But those are actually not good those aren't good models that are scaring us, you know? So we can take that as a signal, if we're having that pain signal at all, that maybe there is a solution, which actually there is hope, and that's to improve our models of our brain by working with current models and anticipating the new ones. That will be even better. Yeah. So that's my take on that for now. I'm still working on that. I'm very interested in it, that's for sure. But yeah, like pain relief is great. Find healthy ways to do it. Be mindful of safety. And hope is good. And hope is an aspect of pain in my model that I just presented. Some hope there is a frame based on building something. Yes. I think so. I mean, if I follow what you're saying, I agree with that. Pain is a vector away from some rudimentary version of harm. I think pain is just like, you need to do something. And like, I don't know, if it was like pleasant to need to do something, I just don't see how that would work. I think we've just written a lot of poetry on it and freaked ourselves out. I think we just accidentally, I don't think animals have the same relationship to pain that we do. I definitely think, they're very responsive to pain, but I don't think they have our baggage. All right, I'll see folks tomorrow if they want to stop by. Thanks for engaging, Deb. Yes! We have. Exactly. We've romanticized it and we've triangulated it. I think we've romanticized it and triangulated it. And that's going to just create a big old problemo. Yeah, that's what I think it is. I think we triangulate pain. All right. Thank you for that chain of thoughts. That was very interesting for me. I'm going to keep percolating that one. Have a wonderful day. Oversaturated our radars. I think we looped it in a weird way. Yeah. Okay, bye!